Nurah Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nurah Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nurah Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Nurah Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nurah Muhammad. It is great to be with you, and I am so grateful that you have joined me again in another episode of the podcast. I am so excited to have this really wonderful opportunity to come to you week after week and to have you come back and tune in week after week and hear about news and views from my perspective. And I like to emphasize that I always strive to have a Black perspective in consideration of the significant challenges that impact our community and the tools and the resources and the strategies that I think are well suited to address the challenges that we have. And I came across an article recently in the online publication Madame Noir, and it really caught me feeling a bit dismayed, or it had me feeling a bit dismayed. The title of the article is "Black Women Can No Longer Afford to Save Broken Black Men." And I would encourage you who are listening to check out the article for yourself. I would like to know what you think about it, and I'm going to share in this episode what I think about it. I will make sure I include a link in the show notes so that you can access the article directly from the podcast. But as I read the article, many things jumped out to me that gave me quite a bit of concern, I would say. Essentially, just to summarize the article, and I hope that I do the author justice in my summation. The sister, it appears that it is a Black woman who wrote the article. In the article, she's saying that the loyalty that Black women have shown and demonstrated to broken Black men is coming at the expense of our own well-being. In the article, the author cites incidents in which Black women have been the victims of homicides at the hands of Black men that they've known personally. And she says that essentially Black men call upon Black women when they're in need. And she questions why are Black women everyone's first pick for savior? So, just from the title of the article, Black Women Can No Longer Afford to Save Broken Black Men, the first question that comes to me is why do Black women think that they can save broken Black men? Where does that thinking come from? Where does that idea that a woman has the capacity to save a man who's broken? So that's the first question that comes to mind. The second question that comes to mind is, what is the root cause of the brokenness of Black men? Why are they broken? Obviously, that is not what this article is about, but I cannot ignore the fact that the Black man has some brokenness. And then another question comes to me, are Black women broken? Or is it just black men that are broken? And the author asks another question, and she says in the article, or excuse me, it's not a question. The author makes a statement in the article. She says that my survival is more important than your rehabilitation. And who asked the black woman to put anyone else first? If your survival is more important than another's rehabilitation, who has suggested that that is not the case? And so I want to tackle some of the ideas that come to my mind in reading the article. And I want to do it fairly. I want to do it justly. I want to share my thoughts as earnestly and precisely as I can, because I find articles like this to be extremely problematic for the black community. I am one of those black women that love black men. I love black women. I love the black family. I love the black community. And I want to see all of us whole. I want to see the black woman whole, the black man whole, the black child whole. I want to see the black community whole. I want us to be whole again, and to be whole again with each other. And I find that articles like this serve to further create a divisive conversation, separating the male and the female. So let's get into it. The black woman has a savior complex. We have an idea, many black women have this idea that we can save black men or be a hero to black men and others possibly. And, you know, black women tend to be considered very long-suffering, very enduring. Black women have been deemed the backbone of the black community, which personally is a definition and title that I reject, but I will discuss that in a later episode. But where is this idea coming from for us that it is our job or our ability to save a black man? I recall years ago, I had a minister who used to always repeat that when you give someone something for nothing, you help ruin them. And he would say it over and over again. And as I'm reading this article, I am connecting what he said then with what this woman is talking about here in this article. She said in the article, why are black women everyone's first pick for savior? In the article, she talks about when black men need something, they call a black woman first. So my challenge is, why are we giving men something that they haven't earned and that they're not entitled to? Just because a black man calls does not mean that you have to answer if he is not deserving of that which he is calling for. She's not talking about a black man that's being productive and being constructive and being responsible in the community. In this article, she's talking about men who haven't gotten it together, men who are and have been irresponsible and have a history of irresponsibility. So, and she doesn't she doesn't discriminate. She's not just talking about mates and boyfriends, spouses. She's talking about black women's fathers and brothers and uncles and friends and other relatives. And so if a man is calling for something, sister, it is not your responsibility to fill every apparent need. Perhaps the reason why this black man is calling on you or me or us is because every time they call, we answer. And we answer and give them something that they haven't earned and that they don't deserve. And so just like any stray animal, they're going to go where they've been fed, but that doesn't mean that where they're being fed, they're going to make a home there. And that's why we call them strays. So in this case, I would suggest, and I'll say that it's not, this woman did not necessarily ask for an answer to any of this. I think she's just making a statement that we can no longer afford to save broken black men. But I would suggest to her and to anyone reading this article that it is not your responsibility, especially to give someone something that they are not entitled to, that they are not deserving of, and that they didn't earn. So just coming right behind that, I have to say, if a woman is supporting someone who has demonstrated a history of brokenness, I'm not talking about, the husband that may have fallen apart at the sudden tragic loss of a parent or of a child, someone who has shown a history of responsibility and accountability and has hit hard times. That is not who she's talking about in this article. She's talking about those men who have been reckless in their lives. And so if we are making decisions to enter into relationships with men that we deem as broken, then at some point we have to turn the mirror and look at ourselves and say, now, what is wrong with my thought process that compels me over and over to choose to enter into relationships with men who are broken? What is that? What is it about me? And we have to do a careful self-examination of ourselves. See, this article is talking about black women no longer saving broken black men. And I would suggest perhaps it's not just the men who have the problem here. Maybe it is also us, women, who also have a problem in our decision making. And I don't want, I know in conversations like this, it can be triggering. People can get excited, get caught up in their feelings. And some women may rebut what I just said by saying, well, if I don't have a broken black man, I'm not going to have a man at all. And I would disagree with that. I would say that to some extent, greater or lesser, certainly all of us, black people in America, especially those of us who are born here, we have some brokenness with us to a greater or lesser extent, definitely. But those amongst us who show a history, a habit even of bad decision making, of poor choices, of irresponsibility, this isn't something that comes out in a relationship a year in. You can learn this about a person just after talking a month with someone and learning about them and asking those pointed questions and being strategic in the courtship or in the introduction. If we give ourselves time to get to know the person before getting intimate, before becoming physical, before we allow ourselves to be led by lust into a physical relationship, we should enter into a mental relationship and get to know the person. If a person lacks character, if a person lacks decency, that is not going to be too hard to detect, especially if we are refraining from physical intimacy early on into the relationship. And so what I would suggest is that we have to do a much better job in our own discernment. And if we are lacking in discernment, or if we are skipping the discerning process totally, then we really have to look at ourselves and see, well, what is it in us that we are so earnest to rush into a relationship with someone that is, one, broken, or someone that we just don't know that well at all. And then once things go south, we want to say, well, this man was broken. But it took two of you to enter into the relationship. When he asked you for something that he didn't earn, it was up to you to say yes or to say no. And so I encourage us to look at the decisions that we make that contribute to our propensity to have relationships with men that we deem that we are broken or that are broken. So something else that comes to mind in this article, I find that often women think that, as I said, we can have a savior complex, and we think that we can help lead a man to wholeness. We have an idea about ourselves, as Black women in America, because, we are the most educated in this country. We are the group that is leading in entrepreneurship. We have a concept of ourselves that we are whole, but the Black man isn't. Now, this goes back to what I started with early on, understanding the root cause of our brokenness. If we don't understand the root cause of the brokenness of the Black man, then we are spinning our wheels and going nowhere. See, if we don't understand the root cause of the brokenness of the Black man, then we don't understand how we ourselves are also broken. A man who's broken can't protect that which is his rightfully to protect. And we rightfully are the Black man's to protect. In the article, the woman says, aren't we deserving of elevation and protection? And, well, certainly we are. But how can we be elevated and protected when our men are broken? And so if we're not elevated, if we're not protected, if we are not put on a pedestal, then we are not in an environment that is conducive to us thriving ourselves. And so if we are compromised, if he is compromised, then we too have been compromised because we're not receiving the honor and the respect and the dignity that we too are entitled. So I would suggest that understanding the cause of the brokenness of the Black man, it relates directly to us and our own well-being, what causes us to make poor choices. I never try to think of the Black man in a worse off condition than I am because I don't see myself separate and distinct. I see that I'm the Black man's and I see that the Black man is mine and that the problems that I have, those are his, and the problems that he has, and they are mine, and that we're one family and we have to work on ourselves and work with each other. I do believe that we have a responsibility to each other, but I also believe that we have the right to choose. We have the freedom of choice. And when we aren't responsible with the freedoms that we have, including choice, then we have some of the outcomes that this woman, frankly, is talking about in her article. So understanding that root cause. And so as it may often be the case, I'm going to say some things that might be considered controversial. So when I think about what makes a man whole, what can help repair the brokenness in a man, then I believe the answer is a man. And if a man is broken, then, we would say, well, how was he raised? What was his childhood like? Did he have a father in the home? Did he have strong male role models who ushered him into manhood, who led him, who were positive influences, modeling manhood, modeling responsibility, accountability, dignity? and elevation of women, respect and decent treatment of women? Did he have that in his life? Did he suffer any abuses, any traumas in his life? What's happened to him in his early stages of development that impeded his growing and developing into a whole man? And so often, and unfortunately, we find there to be an absence of a father, an absence of a key male figure in the child's life. Often we may find neglect. Often we may find a incarceration. Often we may find single parenting by a mother. And so to that, I would say we have to work harder. If we can identify the absence of a man in negatively impacting, excuse me, the development and the wholeness of a child, a male child, impeding or inhibiting his development into a whole male, then we have to investigate why men are absent in the lives of their children. And one of the greatest connectors, one of the most reliable mechanisms for a man, a father, to remain in the life of his son is marriage. Now, I know this is tough talk, and this isn't something that is that commonly discussed, but let's discuss it. What are we doing having children and not doing what's necessary and what's most reliable to secure the male attachment? And you would say, well, he should just stay around because that's his son. And he should stay around. And marriage helps that. Marriage helps a man stay around. That is the mechanism for boys to be raised by their fathers. As controversial as it sounds, and here's the thing, it takes two people to get married. So I'm not saying it's the woman's fault that the man didn't get married. However, if the woman had a child outside of marriage, it's because of a choice that she made. She made it with a man, but she also was involved in that decision making. So what I am suggesting, if we want the next generation of girls, of young women, to find men who are whole men, we must take the measured steps to ensure that these boys who are coming up and growing into adulthood with them have what's needed in their lives on a daily basis that will guide them into the wholeness of manhood. You and I as women cannot make men out of boys. That is like a bear trying to make a monkey by modeling what a monkey does. A bear can't model what a monkey does. A monkey has to be raised by another monkey. A bear can't be raised by a monkey. A bear has to be raised by another bear. So, in that these may be silly examples, but we have a notion at times that men are indispensable and that we can be father and mother, but then we complain that men are shiftless and men aren't responsible and men walk out when there is a mechanism that ensures the likelihood of that boy child and that girl child too to be raised with the guidance and the love of a father, and that is marriage. So I'm not saying that you should get married, but I am sharing the mechanism that is most likely and more certain to ensure the presence of a man in a child's life. Are you saying, Nurah, then that it's the woman's fault that men are broken? Of course, I'm not saying that. I am saying that we can contribute to the brokenness of men by giving them something for nothing, whether it's in a relationship and we're being intimate with them and they have no responsibility, no obligation. How often do we call men dogs and because they're in relationships with other women in addition to us? How often do we do that? And we have not asked for a commitment. We have not demanded anything yet. We have not demanded anything from him, anything that has any kind of permanence. But we would offer our bodies to these guys and have and hope that he'll do the right thing. It doesn't work like that. And I don't know, maybe grandmothers are different, but there was a time when grandmothers would encourage their daughters and their granddaughters and their great grands on the right way to conduct themselves when they're, out there and finding themselves interested in men and boys. There was guidance that a woman would have from older, seasoned women so that girls and young ladies wouldn't make the mistake of giving themselves away to somebody who was unworthy or who did not demonstrate their worthiness. So, as this woman is saying, that black women can no longer afford to save black men, why would we think that was ever our role? Why would we think that that was something that we could do? See, that's a mistake on our part. That's us making an assumption that we could save them or that we should try to save them. We don't have the capacity to do that. That's operating out of our lane. We have the capacity to grow and to learn and to prepare ourselves and be ready when a whole man shows up. But in the meantime, it's not for us to give ourselves and to give our resources away to someone who has not yet shown any worthiness to that. And so, it takes two people to have a relationship. And so if the relationship is an imbalanced relationship, then you have to ask yourself, why did you make that choice? And even better, I need to make a different choice. And I need to make a different choice moving forward. It's one thing to make a mistake once, but it's another thing to have a habit of bad choices and then passing these same choices down to our children. I've known young women who are watching their moms enter into relationships with men or bringing men into the home or into the picture, and the guys just are totally unworthy. You can see that this guy is bringing nothing to the table, but mom is defending him and saying, what benefits he has, or I want companionship, or this is my life. And even the younger girl, the daughter, is looking at this guy, or the son is at the house looking like, yo, what is mom thinking? What is she thinking with this guy? He's no good, but he's cute. Mom finds him attractive. He says sweet words. He showed up with flowers, even though the lights were off because he was out gambling and didn't pay the bill. So we have a legacy or a history of making bad choices. But certainly men, our brothers are broken and sisters, we are broken too. But I don't want articles like this to create or widen the chasm that is already between black men and black women. We both have to get it together. When we do this thing of saying that one is greater or lesser than, we find ourselves in a world of trouble. And I believe that the Willie Lynch system remains at play. I think that it's been effective, so why not continue to use the tool that works? And you'll say, well, but it was a black woman that wrote this. It wasn't, someone that's trying to create dissension in the race or dissension in our community. Well, the dissension is already created in the mindset that is propagated for us. And so we'll read an article about a woman being victimized and how the man didn't come through, and it pulls on our heartstrings and we say, oh, that's just not right. And we feel the feeling without thinking the thought first. They made a bad decision. It is not just about him. And it's important to me because I love Black women so much that we examine ourselves and we examine the choices that we are making. I believe in the elevation and the respect and the dignity to which Black women are entitled. Sisters, though, I believe that we have to demand it first for ourselves by giving it to ourselves first. And that starts with the choices that we make, and what we let into our atmosphere, who we let into our space, who we share time with, where we spend our resources. That matters. And how we spend our time and where we give our resources, that is a reflection of what we think about ourselves. We are broken and we have to get ourselves together, but it's something that we have to do together. I don't believe that we have to be a separate and blaming each other. I say that we are both victims of the same victimizer and that we have to turn to each other and not the victimizer to find the cure for our victimology or victimhood. I believe that that cannot come from the one who broke us. Our wholeness has to come from within. And I urge you who come across articles like this, before you feel the feeling, think the thought. Think the thought first so that we are not so sucked into these emotional, moving stories or moving articles and not think logically and identify the choices that people have made that landed them into the trouble that we find ourselves. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that I've given you something to think about. I'd be interested in what you think about this episode and also about the article. Again, I will include a link to this article in the show notes so that you can go to it, read it, and then come on back and let me know what you think. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Until next time, stay in peace. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nurah Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, nurahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@nurahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nurah Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nurah Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.